Divorce. Very familiar word in our society today, affecting 50% of us. If you haven't experienced divorce personally, chances are you either know someone who has or perhaps will one day. Divorce affects us in so many different ways, financially, physically, emotionally, mentally, and not only does it affect us personally, but everyone around us, from our children to our husband or wife that's also going through the same process, our parents, in-laws, siblings, co-workers, the list goes on and on. Divorce also can seem like a never-ending process. And unfortunately, without a handbook to go through on how to get us through divorce successfully, it can be quite devastating and painful. With us today for the next half hour, we have in the studio Dr. Debbie Hecker, who is an expert and specializes in letting go and pushing through the pain of divorce to experience a fulfilled life after divorce. Dr. Hecker, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure. And I want to ask you, what is the worst part about divorce in our society today?
I would say the worst part of divorce, Michelle, is that it affects so many areas of our life. It can affect us emotionally, it can affect us physically, it can affect our day-to-day experiences. We can go through a range of feelings, and regardless of the circumstances, everybody will go through some kind of upheaval, an emotional upheaval. And regardless of whether or not one takes the initiative, and I'll refer to that person as the dumper, or when is the recipient of that, the dumpee, nobody gets by without an emotional upheaval.
There are so many things we don't expect when divorce hits us, especially if we're the dumpee. What are some of the things that we can expect when we're going into a divorce?
The range of feelings is tremendous. It can be anywhere from sadness, depression, surprisingly exhilaration, relief. Oftentimes you'll hear about people saying, finally, I've reached the point where I can be divorced. Sadness, anger, despair, loneliness. Great, now I can start a new life. So there's really a range of feelings that one will experience.
Quite an emotional roller coaster, it seems. Not just a flat line. It's going to fluctuate through the whole entire process.
And along those lines, I think it's important to mention that sometimes people think they're going crazy because the range of feelings is so varied, and they can go to sleep and feel, hey, I feel pretty okay, and then wake up the next day and be taken completely by surprise. I have actually an interesting clinical example. I have a patient who started off talking about his divorce in terms of, I don't see how I can possibly get through this.
Right.
And very gradually he moved into a place where he was feeling more secure about it, and in fact was actually looking forward to his life as a single person. The day of his divorce, he sent me an email, and the subject matter was help. And he was completely blindsided. He had no anticipation whatsoever that here he was feeling terrific, and then the next day he was, am I doing the right thing? So the point is, of course, that there are so many different feelings, and they can fluctuate. They gradually will level off.
And I'm sure there are times when we are going to second guess. Did we do the right thing? Just like what you said, did we do the right thing? Because sometimes I know divorce is necessary, but still the whole process of getting through that pain is unavoidable, correct?
I don't think that anybody is 100%. I think divorce is one of those experiences in life where there's always a level of ambivalence about it, and even though the scales may tip in the direction of I need to do this, I would say that there's always some degree of ambivalence, even post-divorce.
Even post-divorce, very interesting. Well, you're an accomplished psychotherapist. Why divorce? Why specialize in divorce?
Well, I went through a very painful divorce experience myself many years ago, and I realized at the time that I was going through this intense legal process, but I really needed somebody to talk with about how do I let go? How do I do this? I had no idea how to do it, and although I had someone helping me, a very good psychotherapist, he did not specialize in the experience of letting go, specifically as it relates to divorce. And as I became more sensitive to the pain of separation and the trauma of divorce, I became a champion of the need for people to go through a divorce an emotional experience.
So there was a definite need there that needed to be filled, and actually going through the experience yourself, you were able to relate to so many others and help them through this process. Divorce is such an emotional roller coaster. What is the purpose?
Michelle, let me interrupt you for a moment,
Sure.
if I may. Unfortunately, divorce ends up sometimes in the wrong hands. And by that I mean that more often than not, the focus of a divorce process is in the hands of the attorneys. A divorce is really a twofold process. There's the emotional divorce, and then there's the legal divorce. And unfortunately, if the emotional end of it is not appropriately dealt with, there are going to be a lot of difficulties that will ensue. Okay, let me give you an example, Michelle. A kind of classic example is a man, could be a woman, but it's generally the man, who feels so guilty about initiating a divorce that he will say to his attorney, you know, just give her everything. Just let her take everything.
I want it over with. Just do what you got to do kind of thing.
And this is a very good example of how his emotions are clouding his judgment. And ultimately, that can lead to poor legal decisions. So again, that's an example of how, or another example might be a woman who's so angry, if it's the woman who's the recipient of the initiator, who's so angry, she just wants to go after, let's go after everything. Again, a divorce is a situation where you're not going to get everything you want, and the less adversarial the divorce is, the more productive and dignified it's likely to be. So that it's so important to deal with the emotional component of the divorce process.
With what you're saying, Dr. Hecker, it sounds like that the emotional side of divorce in a lot of ways is more important than the legal side. Is that true?
No, I would not say, Michelle, it's more important. I would say it's equally as important, and unfortunately, it's underutilized. I have a mission, and that mission is to end the war between the parties.
Kind of like the movie, War of the Roses?
The War of the Roses, that can go on and on. And the problems can go on and on post-divorce. They can complicate good legal resolution, and they can also create a lot more expense, double, even triple the attorney's costs. So entering counseling early on can minimize the complications in the legal arena.
Would you say that's the primary purpose for getting this type of counseling, or is there a bigger purpose here?
The purpose of the counseling process is for me to help someone to heal, to get over the pain as quickly and economically as possible. And hopefully to use the grieving process or the letting go process as a stepping stone to growth, renewal, even transformation.
Speaking of grieving, because we alluded to the fact earlier that divorce can be the death of a relationship, next to actually experiencing death in a family, can we be grieving and not know it?
Excellent question. There are times where it takes a family member to actually say to the person who is going through this, you know, you're acting kind of strangely, or, you know, are you aware of the fact that you're depressed?
Dr. Hecker and Michelle Miller will return in a moment. It's a sad fact that 50% of all American marriages end in divorce. Damage control of the effects of divorce depends on learning how to live a new life as a divorced person. If you are contemplating divorce, currently involved in divorce, or attempting to adjust to life after divorce, Dr. Hecker wants you to know she can help you.
I got interested in doing divorce counseling specifically because I went through a very, very painful, difficult divorce. I'd been doing kind of general psychotherapy for many years and realized that some of my patients were kind of transitioning through similar kinds of experiences, and decided that I needed to organize this in some way, because I did not benefit from the help of someone who was really trained specifically in dealing with the problems associated with divorce.
To minimize pain, suffering, and guilt, and guide you more comfortably towards your new life, Dr. Hecker is offering a complimentary phone consultation. During your consultation, Dr. Hecker will answer your questions, discuss the specifics of your situation, outline a course of action, and discuss the benefits of counseling for you. For your complimentary consultation, please call the number on the screen. Once again, here are Michelle Miller and Dr. Deborah Hecker.
For those of you that are just now joining us, we are speaking with Dr. Deb Hecker and how to get through the trauma of divorce and enjoy life on the other side, life after divorce. Dr. Hecker, what is the process if I'm going through divorce or thinking about going through a divorce? Do I call you before I initiate the divorce or during the divorce process?
You should call me immediately. Whether or not you have made the decision to go through the divorce, whether or not you're thinking about going through the divorce, or even if it's after the divorce, give me a call.
So there's
Pick up the
no
phone
wrong time to call?
There's no wrong time to call. You may be talking about it, thinking about it, and ultimately not do it. But at that point, you've already started a process, and you do need to decide whether or not you want to go in one direction or another.
Now, how would I contact you for your services?
Very easy, Michelle. You just pick up the phone and dial the phone number. I have two offices, one in Washington, D.C., and the other in Florida. A great deal of my practice is on the telephone.
Really?
I actually have clients across the country whom I've never met.
Tell me about that. Why and how the telephone?
Well, historically, the telephone has been used as a method for hotline counseling, crisis counseling, or even as an adjunct to traditional therapy. It used to be thought that, in fact, if somebody was going through a divorce counseling experience, that they would have to have a face-to-face experience, and it would drag on, it would be long-term. But what we found is that there are tremendous benefits to using the counseling process via the telephone.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. What are the benefits? Because traditional counseling methods you know, talk about the face-to-face, the body language, reading that body language and getting to the core. What are the benefits of phone counseling?
Well, there are good reasons actually for this trend. The first one I would say is, as we know, people are so busy, don't have travel time, and there's a tremendous convenience to being able to sit in your office, sit in your living room, and just simply pick up the phone. So people are very excited about that idea. There's also the aspect of privacy. There's a level of privacy that one has in their own home, in their own office, that, for example, one doesn't have when they walk into a doctor's office. If somebody has physical limitations, for example, the use of the telephone would obviously be an advantage for them. And interestingly, the final point is that research shows that if one is comfortable in their environment, they're much less likely to be inhibited in talking about difficult subjects.
So for many people, talking over the phone, I know for myself that would be much easier for me because I would be able to let my emotional guard down and let the floodgates open and be more honest. Do you find that to be the case?
Well, interestingly, what I found is that people are initially sort of skeptical, like, really, isn't this done on face-to-face? What I found is that most people tend to like it and actually prefer the use of the telephone as opposed to face-to-face counseling.
It makes sense. It really does. Well, what about children? Do you often counsel with children? And if so, over the telephone too? Does it work for
I don't
kids?
counsel the children over the telephone. What I do is I will counsel the husband and wife, the former spouses. We can have a conference call. We can discuss the children, but I don't talk to the children per se over the phone.
Okay, so for anyone that's watching that may think, well, my child is really going through a rough time, and I can tell there's behavioral changes, you would recommend maybe someone that specializes in child therapy, or?
Yes, and as a group, the parents of the children and myself can talk about those issues, identify them, and then decide what the best way to proceed is.
Well, and I think what you mentioned too, that the parents, that's really the root. Isn't that correct when it comes to dealing with the children and how they deal with divorce? They're watching mommy and daddy and how they deal with divorce.
Well, I think it's fair to say that if the parents are not going through divorce well, the children are going to have a problem. The more adversarial a divorce is, the more difficult it is going to be, and the more traumatic for the child.
Dr. Hecker, people going through divorce, what's been the biggest complaint or concern that they've had?
I think the most obvious one is the fear of being alone.
Really?
You don't want to be alone. There's a tendency, as human beings, we have a tendency to want to attach, to have a partner, to have somebody to depend on. And learning how to be an unmarried person is something that you have to learn how to do.
Why is it so difficult for us to overcome that fear of being alone?
I think attachment is part of the human condition, and from birth onwards, we are attached to people, and we don't necessarily learn how to be alone and like it and get comfortable with it.
Can you get through the divorce process without learning the lesson of how to be alone?
No. You have to learn to let go in order to reinvent yourself, in order to reinvest in life, in order to develop a successful life after divorce. You must successfully go through a letting go process, or the problems will inevitably at some point show up.
Can you do it by yourself?
Not usually. Can happen. Most of the time it's hard for you to look at yourself objectively and to recognize that there are issues that need to be looked at. Usually with the help of somebody else to help you transition is what must take place.
Dr. Hecker and Michelle Miller will return in a moment. It's a sad fact that 50% of all American marriages end in divorce. Damage control of the effects of divorce depends on learning how to live a new life as a divorced person. If you are contemplating divorce, currently involved in divorce, or attempting to adjust to life after divorce, Dr. Hecker wants you to know she can help you.
I embarked on a study and some solid research on the attachment process, the nature of attachment that human beings have, so that I could really fully understand what the emotions and the psychological process of separation is all about.
To minimize pain, suffering, and guilt, and guide you more comfortably towards your new life, Dr. Hecker is offering a complimentary phone consultation. During your consultation, Dr. Hecker will answer your questions, discuss the specifics of your situation, outline a course of action, and discuss the benefits of counseling for you. For your complimentary consultation, please call the number on the screen. Once again, here are Michelle Miller and Dr. Deborah Hecker.
So the number one challenge and concern of people going through divorce is the fear of loneliness.
Fear of loneliness.
What about anything else? What would be behind that?
Second one, hands down, am I ever going to get married again? That is a question I can almost anticipate. The concern people have that after divorce, that's the end of your life.
The fear of growing old alone, isn't it?
Fear of growing old alone.
Anything else?
I would say the third most compelling question really has to do with who's going to take care of me? How do I take care of myself? Financially, emotionally? You know, I'm all alone now.
You find yourself alone,
I'm all alone.
So you think you're going to be alone for the rest of your life. And it doesn't have to be that way, does it?
The answer is that you're going to learn how to take care of yourself, and that's part of what the divorce counseling is all about, helping you to rely on yourself, helping you to be an unpartnered human being.
Switching gears here, men, women, it takes two to get married, it takes two to get divorced. Do you find that men go through a more difficult time than women, or is it pretty equally balanced, or tell me a little bit about that?
I think there is a gender difference, Michelle. I would say that men and women go through divorce in a somewhat different way. When we talk about the emotional component of divorce, it's a lot easier, and I think comes more naturally to women to sit and to talk with their friends and to make a phone call to someone like myself.
We like to talk.
We like to talk. Men traditionally are likely to want to self-contain those emotions, to go to a bar, perhaps, to anesthetize themselves, or maybe even to go out and play a sport. So I think that while both men and women have to go through this letting go process, they may go through it somewhat differently, and men might be more hesitant to pick up that phone and call because they're not even necessarily connected to their feelings.
They're not as emotional as women.
They have the emotions, but they're not in touch with them.
I see.
Interestingly, Michelle, I have an equal amount of men and women clients.
Really? And I'm sure you have to counsel with each gender a little differently because of the gender differences, right?
I have to get those men to start connecting to their feelings.
But it can be very successful for men, though, correct?
Going through a divorce process is one of hope. One can successfully reinvent themselves, reinvest in a new life, use, as I said earlier, use divorce as a stepping stone to a life transformation.
Dr. Hecker, I know you specialize and you counsel individuals that are actually going through the divorce process. What about for individuals that have been in long-term relationships and they're not technically married, but they find themselves in a breakup? Would this still apply to them as well?
Letting go is something you will experience regardless of whether or not you've been in a formal marriage. When two people are attached and they go their separate ways, they're going to have to let go. So the counseling that I provide is really appropriate for anyone who is going through a separation.
Okay, so whether you're married or not, your services would still apply and each one can benefit from it.
Yes.
Dr. Hecker and Michelle Miller will return in a moment. It's a sad fact that 50% of all American marriages end in divorce. Damage control of the effects of divorce depends on learning how to live a new life as a divorced person. If you are contemplating divorce, currently involved in divorce, or attempting to adjust to life after divorce, Dr. Hecker wants you to know she can help you.
There are several factors that I believe contributed to my personal interest as well as my expertise in helping people navigate their divorces. About 8 years ago, I was a founding member of a women's center for midlife development in Washington, D.C., and it came to my attention after a period of time that many of the women who came to our groups and wanted to work with me individually were dealing with matters of divorce and how does a midlife woman go through a divorce. The second thing that really I think is a contributing factor, I've always had an interest in law and psychology. I have acquired some training in the legal profession, specifically in a specialty called collaborative law, as well as mediation, so that I have a background in the legal aspects of divorce as well as the emotional components.
To minimize pain, suffering, and guilt, and guide you more comfortably towards your new life, Dr. Hecker is offering a complimentary phone consultation. During your consultation, Dr. Hecker will answer your questions, discuss the specifics of your situation, outline a course of action, and discuss the benefits of counseling for you. For your complimentary consultation, please call the number on the screen. Once again, here are Michelle Miller and Dr. Deborah Hecker.
How would I know that I would need to pick up the phone and call you?
There are a couple of things, Michelle, that you might be experiencing that would be good indicators that you might want to pick up the phone and get some help. I would say the first one is if you're in such extreme pain, such overwhelming emotional turmoil, there's no reason to go through that. If life is unbearable, you want to pick up that phone and call. Okay. Another example of a situation where you would want to call is if you're finding yourself having difficulty navigating your day, getting through the process of your life, getting to work, helping your children, functioning through the day effectively.
Your day-to-day activities.
Day-to-day activities. That's a very good indicator that you'd want to pick up the phone and call.
Which there again are some signs that necessarily may not be pronounced, but that, you definitely may need some help getting through the whole process.
Depression, I think, is another example that someone can experience if you're feeling lethargic, just really down and out. Then
just no motivation, no will, no drive, can't get out of bed, just that whole blah.
Sometimes people experience what we call psychosomatic symptoms. They may get headaches, they may get stomach aches. Those kinds of symptoms may also be an indicator that they're having trouble really addressing the emotions that they need to in order to move through the process.
Will you experience any of these type of emotions at any given point? I mean, is it worse in the beginning or at the end or in the middle or?
There's no specific way that somebody navigates a divorce process. As I mentioned earlier, feelings can fluctuate from day to day, minute to minute. Just when you think you have it all together, it can hit you again. I gave you the example before of a patient of mine who, on the day of divorce, was frantic. I'm actually, another situation occurs to me. I'm working with someone now who came to me 100% sure this is what he wanted, and now we're talking about, maybe I can stay in this marriage. Maybe there's a way that I can do this. So the feelings fluctuate, and they can hit you at any time.
Which is the reason why individuals should focus on the emotional part of what they're going through in thinking about divorce or going through the divorce, whether they're thinking about it or actually doing it. It's that emotional part of it.
It's really not a choice, Michelle. It's something that you have to do in order to successfully leave one situation and move on to another. It's impossible to reattach yourself to someone else and let go at the same time.
Yeah.
So one must experience those feelings, express those feelings, deal with the loss of the emotions and the person, and then re-enter life.
Become a whole person again. And then you have the best to offer the next person that comes along in your life. Well, what about those individuals that perhaps may go through the process, seek the counseling, but still just cannot let go? What happens to those individuals?
I would say in answer to that question that after a period of time, if someone is really having trouble letting go and going through the various sort of phases that we've talked about, that we now may be talking about depression, which is a whole separate entity. Depression and letting go are inextricably interwoven. However, if in a period of time those symptoms and kind of reinvesting in life does not occur, then we may be talking about something completely separate.
It's gone beyond the letting go part. Well, how long does this whole process take?
The process can vary, Michelle, from person to person. It can take anywhere from several months to several years, and that can depend on what their life experience has been prior to a divorce. Have they ever been through a divorce before? What their experience has been with letting go in the past. So it really can depend.
A lot of different factors go into play based on the individual's makeup, per se. That makes sense. Dr. Hector, thanks so much for being our guest today. I've learned so much in speaking with you, and I hope our viewers have as well. And at the bottom of your screen, there is a phone number. If you would like to make an appointment to speak with Dr. Hector, please give her a call. And we thank you for joining us.